Hey everybody, it's Tim from ModTech Labs, and we're doing another video here at SIGGRAPH 2020. We're going to be talking about video game paradigms for real-time production, and basically, how do we make that transition to real-time? Give you a little bit about me. I spent 10 years, well, actually it was 20 years. It's fun how time flies. You know, you say that same line for so long and then you're like, wait, no, it was 15. No, now it's coming up on 20 in the game and movie industry. So in video games, I was a technical artist. In movies, I was a pipeline technical director. Last movie I worked on was Alice in Wonderland Through the Looking Glass. And there's just a different way that movies and games work up until really kind of now. Real-time production is something that, you know, we have always dreamed of. Everyone's always talked about, well, why don't you put it in a game engine? Why don't you do it real time? Why don't you do it like this? Why don't you? And it just didn't make sense. It didn't make sense for a number of different reasons. One of them, obviously, because being able to get that movie level quality inside of a game engine was just a very difficult thing to do. The amount of quality that you had to go ahead and drop as far as the actual assets was really poor, but I can tell you, you know, things like Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs actually did use some video game paradigms, and they end up doing a motion capture of, you remember the snow fight scene where they were throwing, you know, obviously it wasn't snow, it was ice cream, Cloudy with a Chance, right? And they were throwing ice cream back and forth. They had a actual over-the-shoulder Sony camera that had a motion capture, and they could see blocking version of it when they ran through. So somebody was actually going with a physical camera in a virtual environment, and you know, this is, you know, those kind of starts, but it was a one-off thing. You know, when we're talking about later on, like, what are we doing here? Well, you got to bring in video game paradigms. How do you use video game technology, not just optimization, which was our earlier talk today, but how do you actually go ahead and do really cool things that video games kind of do natively, like social, which doesn't make a lot of sense, but we'll talk about that in a little bit. So to give you a little bit about my company, I am a founder and CTO at ModTech Labs. I also am a serial entrepreneur at Underminer Studios, and then Volumation. And then, of course, I have a bachelor's of science. We talked about my past. ModTech Labs is venture-backed by two separate places, one of them being Sputnik, and the other one, of course, being Quantsite Ventures. Futures, I would say that right. I am a Intel Top Innovator of the Year award 3 years running, and then as well a Top Innovator for the City of Austin as of last year. I don't believe they're actually doing those awards this year, so you know, I'm the current reigning. That's how it works. As far as other things that I do, I am part of CTA, which is Consumer Technology Association. Those are the people that run CES. I am the chair for XR. And so I make lots of calls and fun things around that. So video game paradigms, what are we actually talking about here? You know, I already said social, which sounds completely crazy. It really is the psychology of people. How do you use the way that people think for user experience? Obviously social abilities. How do you get people to communicate? Previously, it's everybody's all on set, everybody's in the same locations, everyone's looking at the same thing, everyone's doing the same stuff. You start putting tablets in front of people's faces, you start doing cameras, individual things, everybody starts having a different point of view. So actually, how do you share those points of view? How do you have people communicate between each other? You know, annotations, things like that. How do you get this immediate feedback system? So with, you know, real-time production, you can have that. You can have an immediate feedback of not just asset looks bad, we need to fix asset. You can do an annotation on a screen, somebody else gets it, super cool stuff. Data management, you're dealing with data in a very different way. It used to be, you do your capture, you do your green screen, you do your chop. On servers, you have your capture, of course, things are captured and then they come back and, you know, and you look at it maybe in the village and whatnot, but, you know, after that, you know, there's not really a lot of VFX that actually happens on set. Now you can kind of have those things all at the same time. You know, think about The Mandalorian and how they were doing captures, and they said that they did over 50% in shot. Camera, composite, everything done, boom, done. All at once, no touch-ups, no cleanup, probably grading at the end, let's be honest. They're saying nothing, but you do a little color correction, a little grading. You got to sweeten the pot some, but let's be honest. And then another thing that's really kind of cool that comes from games that you don't see in movies. Movies are kind of a waterfall. You have, and it goes, and it goes, and you know, and it's got to be done at this time, and everything just linear fashion. Agile methodology. This is a super interesting thing. that comes from, the game industry and in project production is doing things in loops, being able to iterate on assets and fashions and things like that. Maybe not in the first shot you did this, but you need to go ahead and maybe in the next shot you're going to do that. What's really cool is if you do your real-time production appropriately and you're not just doing in camera everything, you do in camera as in you do the capture, but then you end up filling in the background afterwards. What's really cool about that is it means you can make minor changes, especially if you're not super worried about shine or sheen. Mandalorian had a lot of issues, of course, with reflectivity and refractivity with the helmet and things like that. So you have to be really careful about what you change. You can't change from a white object to a black object, brown object, things like that when those changes and those sheens and shines end up happening. So, but if you have an updated version and, maybe the character's over on that side, it's not even on, but you're using it for lighting, you can do those changes. You can make these things. Super cool stuff. Psychology of people. Just remember when you're building these assets and these tools and the way that you do real-time production, it's not quite the way it was before. Since we're not talking about a linear fashion, you can give people a lot of freedom. You can allow them to go ahead and choose the way that they're going to visualize the assets. You have a director view, you have a DP view, you have maybe a recording view, somebody doing other styles of lighting. Maybe you'd be surprised all the different views. So you can allow that, and you can allow self-direction through that. Another thing, of course, is problem solving. This seems kind of crazy. Obviously we talk about video games and doing problem solving and how we solve these things throughout, allowing people to play games and, they do puzzles and things like that. But when it really kind of comes down to it, you're letting people solve problems on the end as well. If you leave your UI and your UX open enough to where they can pick up, they can move the UI, they can change different things, you can actually incorporate those changes. This will allow them to go ahead and say, I like my view like this. You can save a prefab. You can save, in Unity. You can do UI that's entirely set up like that. And so it allows a whole bunch of different things. So it really does come down to the psychology of people and how people think. So, it's very important, different things for that. Social abilities. We talked about this. And like I said, it sounds a little crazy. Blog-like capabilities and live chat are super important. So think about being able to have your director. Maybe you're not on set, maybe you are on set. They're able to take a capture of whatever it is, and they go annotations. You can go, no, this is wrong. The lighting is off. We need to rotate this. You can draw it literally on screen. They have an iPad right there in front of them. They go, this is wrong, or this is right. I want to see more of this. Super important things like that, and then you could leave that out and you could get those as daily. So someone at the end of the day, or maybe it's already automatically set up, you can do the screen capture, and then this are the annotations. Here it is. People can scroll through and go, oh, maybe they're offset. They don't have an iPad. They can't see the different things. They could capture a GIF. It goes in and goes, this is what I'm talking about. These are the changes and this is how it is. They can see it in linear fashion. And then you can hand those off. And once we start talking about Agile methodology, those can be turned into tasks. Those tasks can be turned into forward movement. That forward movement then can be fed back to the production. So we have this circular kind of instead of waterfall pattern. So it allows for, if not real time, near real time, or at least daily, next daily kind of updates. And so, the dailies become part of the production, because the production can happen at the same time that you're doing the VFX and all the changes and all the production. It's just really kind of cool. Live chat is actually also super important. Be able to allow people to go ahead and while they're talking or while they're doing these captures, typing in these things is just really not a cool thing. People really don't want that. But if I can stand there and I'm looking with an iPad, or I'm looking through a camera, or I'm looking through a lens, or I'm having a setup, and I can literally talk out, and that comment is recorded. And then somebody who's on the other side, so maybe somebody's at terminal, somebody's at an area where they're doing whatever the live color correction or anything like that is, maybe it would be really important for them to actually hear what I'm saying. And these are just, yeah, sure, it could be just a regular mic or different things like that. But if you can do it all through the app, you can actually save that information and go, hey, this is what he was talking about during this. This is what was going on, and this is what needs to happen. And so it could be, once again, fed back into the developers upstream, that comes downstream, that becomes upstream in a circular pattern. Data management, this is a lot of fun. We talk about this a little bit in the optimization talk that I did earlier. You really do want to be careful about how you do your frameworks and how you do a lot of the way data is done. And when I say frameworks, and this can be two different ways, it's not just data management as far as data in and of itself. The data itself, of course, you need to have it light and layers of redundancy. So there's backups and different things like that. So while you're on set, single level things like ZFS is a really good file system for multiple level redundancy storage. But I mean, if you run out of the size of a single server, which is probably going to happen, something like Ceph or a different style data management would end up happening and helping a lot, because it allows you to actually distribute that processing over the nodes, that allowing you to go ahead and exascale, and then it also is fairly redundant as far as single node and multi-node recovery, including drive loss and actual server loss node level. I'm not going to get into nitty gritty on that, and I could, but I won't, because nobody wants to hear it. And then, of course, optimize the data for use. Having multiple versions of the data. If you're having an AR viewer, you're going to have a really optimized version of that maybe can be captured and then plays back a higher end render that's on the device. There's a whole bunch of answers here. When 5G comes, maybe we'll have a whole different conversation. But right now, it's not really there yet. And when I say that, or Wi-Fi, what is it, Wi-Fi 6 that's coming out, the biggest thing that we have is latency on time and packet transfer. Anywhere between 16 and 22 milliseconds is obviously way too long, because it's really about half the time of what would be rendered frame rate. So you can't stream that asset quick enough to send it across to really kind of get a smooth and amazing experience. So you just really kind of be calm with that. So once again, that's the data side. Now we're talking about data management as far as information, having a good user experience to allow individuals to go ahead and make that change. Maybe there's like 4 different versions of some character, or maybe a rock that's in the background. Being able to make those live on-set changes is super important. Be able to go ahead and go, director comes in, it's like, that's not the rock I envisioned. It happens. Okay, well, I got 7 or 8 different rocks. Is this a better rock? They can come up and maybe it blows up. They can see it on their phone. They can see it on a tablet. They can go, this is the one that I really want. And being able to have this as a lightweight framework for them to make these easy changes, obviously, it's very important. And it's not too difficult to do. If you think and you plan out your production appropriately, and not just the production itself, but the ability to go back through production and next iteration, so the tools are a little better, and next one's a little bit better. As long as you're intelligent about it, then you end up coming up with some really cool things. Okay, so Agile methodology, easy for me to say, hard for you to listen to. Agile methodology. Obviously, we're talking about the iterative cycle. You can do a lot of really cool things with this. And I know, looking at things like A/B testing, you're like, why would we want to do that? Soft rollouts of new features. This seems like software development. Yep. Welcome to software development. That's what you're doing. Once you've gotten to the point where it's not a render farm, things get sent off, stuff has to be real time, you are making software. You can do a whole bunch of different things when we're talking about this iterative cycle, and we've discussed on that, I think, to a horse kind of level. We're talking about A/B testing. A/B testing is obviously really, really important in not just the UI/UX world, but in how people see things and how you view things. You have the user experience of what's inside of the tablet, inside of the assets, and people can see what's in there. But the other big thing is, thinking about A/B testing of the actual assets in their background. So, you come in and go, do you like this version Do you like this version? This linear workflow that has previously happened where, well, this is it, and this is what we got. Now let's go. And it doesn't need to be that way, because we have the ability, especially since game engines make everything so much faster, and the ability to go ahead and showcase these things is almost an instantaneous result. It allows us to go ahead and go in and be able to showcase multiple versions. So soft rollout and new features, the same exact thing. When I was working in games, very specifically, and I built a new tool, I'd find somebody who I called a Mikey. If you remember the old Chex commercial, it was, oh, Mikey will try it. He likes anything. You find somebody who is fairly technically sound, but at the same time tends to break things, but remembers what they broke. And so if you're trying to do a new feature, say you have a new user experience, maybe you have a new tool that you're trying to create, always find, the person who's the most technically sound, who can use it on set and can maybe make recommendations and things like that for things to go. And that way, you don't get a director who's a Luddite and, he's would rather slam something over the floor or someone's head instead of, actually going ahead and using a new tool. If you give them something that's broken, then you lost trust. So you obviously have to be very careful with whom and how you make changes to tools. So video game paradigms, what is it not? It's obviously not gamification. It's not full architectural redesign. And it is not competition and leaderboards. Nobody wants a leaderboard in this. Nobody wants competitions that are on that. So, what are we talking about as far as gamification goes? You're not going to level up users. There are some instances where maybe that's useful. Maybe you want to do team building kind of stuff. The person who finds the most bugs gets something. I mean, I don't know. You could totally add that in. Do I really think that you should? No. Directing, teaching, you don't really want that. You may have light tutorials that are outside of it, but really the only reason a tutorial should ever exist is because you didn't do your job in user experience. And I'll say that again for a lot of people who haven't spent a lot of time in user experience. If you have to give a tutorial, you haven't done your job in building a good user experience. Good user experience should call itself out. People should look at it, see buttons, play with things, and go, this obviously makes sense. Either it follows previously agreed upon paradigms, or it is so well written, so clean, and so obvious that everyone can use it. So you have to be very careful with that. And so obviously doing teaching or learning style, it doesn't work. And then also you don't want to do academic style. We're not sitting here trying to train people or teach people on things. Maybe those two comments can kind of be together on that. But yeah, just definitely be careful with your gamification if you decide to use it, which you should. Architectural redesign. The way that you're building things doesn't need an entire, throw out the bathwater with the baby kind of situation. You can obviously do things a little at a time. Maybe instead of doing everything in camera like the Mandalorian, you send back camera data, you take the actual camera shots, and then you end up doing the comp and post afterwards. There's a whole bunch of answers here. All these tools are built to interplay, especially once you start getting into it further into game paradigms and setups that, this is something we're used to being in development and having, here goes, here goes, here goes, here, this trickle down effect. And it's not like we have things in Maya, things get rendered things then go to, and there's just no reason for that. Things can naturally interact and play with each other. And then of course, competition and leaderboards. It's really useless in most applications and really kind of absolutely everywhere. There's a lot of overhead that kind of goes with, I don't know if anybody's ever made a leaderboard. Just building leaderboards in general was very expensive. And it's very expensive to maintain. And then on top of that, literally the amount of engagement that you're going to get out of it is going to be very minimal. And then of course, it is a confidentiality nightmare. So if you're a studio that is doing a bunch of different captures, it is something that can be very dangerous because you're keeping client info. Oh, they got this on this shoot. You're like, oh, what shoot was that? You were shooting here, what, yesterday? Yeah, that's not going to get you in trouble. Obviously, that's pretty much everything I have to talk about on this. Please get in touch with us. I am Tim at modtechlabs.com. And of course, go to www.modtechlabs.com. And for everybody who's here at SIGGRAPH, we have actually a $500 coupon, processing credits, with SIG20. So please go ahead and sign up and use that. We're obviously very excited to have you on our processing platform. Thank you very much.